massacre at St. James's Church in Cape Town, South Africa, on the 25th of July 1993, sent shockwaves around the world. That night the evening service was interrupted by a group of men who burst through the doors and fired indiscriminately on the congregation of some 1,300 people. Such damage was wreaked in 30 seconds that the lives of many would be affected for years to come. The attack left 11 dead and more than 50 seriously injured.
Just after the song item, as it was coming to an end, I heard pops and I thought there was something wrong with the sound system. And then people started screaming and they started crouching or falling down between the seats. I did the same thing. There was an explosion, and shortly after that a massive explosion, and I felt what I now know to be shrapnel hit the side of my leg because the hand grenade exploded 2 rows behind us. And when I looked down, there was just blood down the side of my body and on the carpet, and my trousers were covered in blood.
Yes, the stories abound of acts of bravery in the reflex of the moment.
Just a little bit of what happened in that church. Certainly a horrific situation. These were terrorists who came in, 4 men with AK-47s, hurling grenades, shooting at a congregation of 1,000 people. Their intention was to kill everyone. The only reason that didn't happen was because of the man we're about to speak to today. Charl Van Wyk is a South African missionary. He was there that day visiting that church. He had a .38 with only 5 shots. You know, God saved the nation of Israel with David having 5 stones. He ran these guys off with God's help with this .38 loaded with only 5 cartridges. He's the author of a best-selling book, Shooting Back: The Right and Duty of Self-Defense. And of course, it's about the events of that day, but it is also about the importance of being able to defend yourself, your right, your duty to defend other people. And that's what we're going to talk to him about today. Again, Charl Van Wyk. Thank you for joining us. Now, I was talking to you, you just said that you're a missionary. You basically go all over Africa. You're not really associated with a particular church. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. I'm a full-time missionary. I work mainly in Central Africa and Southern Africa. And that means I visit various churches and involved with many different denominations.
So were you visiting that church that day?
The St. James Church that I was going to was actually my home church at the time. So I was a parishioner there. I was a member of the congregation. I wasn't in any leadership at that time in that specific church.
Okay, and tell us from your perspective, what was happening immediately before the shooting broke out at St. James from your perspective?
Well, we were sitting in the church service. It's quite a large church. There were about 1,000 people present that evening and could easily seat 1,500 people. And we were listening to some young people that were singing on the stage. And the church is built very much like a cinema. So it's high at the back and low in the front with a stage. And the young people were singing to us. And we were just sitting listening to them before the incident occurred.
And then what was your first clue that something was going on? How did it happen from your perspective?
Well, right at the front door of the church, where everybody could see right next to the stage, there was a noise. And I thought, you know, these people should really come in at the back door. They shouldn't make such a big scene at the front. And these terrorists stepped in to the congregation. And it was interesting because I had thought that there was a play taking place. And it's only when they started opening up fire with their automatic assault rifles and they lobbed the grenades into the congregation, and I saw the effects of the rifle shooting where wood was actually shooting out of the benches, splinters were shooting up into the air, that I realized this was not a show or a play that was taking place, that this was a serious terrorist attack on the congregation.
You know, I hear that over and over again. People always say, yeah, I thought it was a play. You hear that a lot from people. They don't, it takes a while for it to register that this is really happening, doesn't it?
Yeah, David, that's right. It takes a couple, I don't want to say a couple of seconds, it's probably a split second to realize what's going on. But it's almost like your brain and your eyes are trying to communicate with each other that this is reality and it's not a game, it's not a play, and you need to react accordingly.
Exactly. Now, once you realized this was really happening, what did you do at that point?
We went down onto the ground as low as possible. Everybody ducked down. They tried to get as low as possible below the benches, underneath the benches, and tried to keep their heads down. It was interesting because some people, for instance, one little girl, she just froze. She couldn't move. And her little friends next to her, Richard O'Keel, who was 17, and another young friend, they went down onto the ground. And so Richard was concerned about the little one sitting up, and he knelt on his knees and went up into the air to pull her down to the ground. And as he went up, he took a bullet in the back of the head, trying to save her life. And another young man, Gerard Harker, is 21 years old. He had a hand grenade land in the aisle next to him, and he fell on top of the grenade with his full body and took a full blow to himself to try and protect the people around him. And his younger brother sitting next to him was also killed in the incident. I went down like everybody else, and I pulled out a .38 special little snub-nose revolver, commonly known as a Saturday night special, and I knelt behind the bench in front of me, and I took 2 shots at the attackers. The challenge was that I was sitting about 4th row from the back of the church, and as I mentioned, it's a big 1,500 seater hall that we were in.
Yeah.
And I just realized, I took 2 shots, and I realized I'm far too far away from the attackers. I'm going to have to try and get in behind them at close range. So I went down onto my haunches, we call it leopard crawl, down on the ground, crawling to the aisle. And I ran out the back door of the church. I had to kick the doors open. And I thought I'll come in behind the attackers in the front of the church. I'll come in behind them at the door that they entered. And as I ran out the back of the church, and I was coming around the corner, the terrorists were already standing at the getaway car. So in a couple of seconds that I had to kick the doors open and run round, they already had left the church. And what I didn't realize at that time was that inside the church, with one of my 2 shots from way back, 4th row from the back of the church, I'd actually hit one of them on the hand. And so they knew there was fire coming from the congregation at them. And so they ran out, but they didn't drive away immediately. When I came running around the corner, one of them was standing at the back left door of the car, and he had his rifle, automatic rifle, on his hip, pointing up to the sky. And he was looking at the door they had come out of. And all I could think was that he was expecting me to come running out of that door because somebody was shooting at them. And he would have just loaded his rifle and blown me away. But by God's grace, I was behind them. And so I took another 3 shots at them, and they jumped in the car and drove off. And it was due to the blood from his hand where I hit him inside the church that got onto the car seats. And so through forensics, the police managed to trace him and arrest him, one of the 4.
Wow. Now, they were trying to go after a white church. They attacked this church because it was in a white area, but that congregation was 35 to 40% black, wasn't it?
That's correct. That's correct, David. Yes, it was a multiracial church. It appears that they were aiming to get a sort of a church that was completely white. And it seems like their homework wasn't done correctly, and there were many people injured that were non-whites. And so there were a lot of non-whites in the church, but that's the way it panned out for them. We also had Russian seamen that were inside the church, and they would sit during the beginning of the service, when the singing was taking place, they would sit with us, and then they would go to a separate hall where they'd have an interpreted service or a sermon that would take place for them. And unfortunately, they were there when the attack also took place. One of them, Dmitry Makagon, had a grenade land in his lap and blew off 2 legs and an arm. And he's still alive and living in Cape Town today.
Really? Wow. Well, it certainly was God's providence that you were able to stop this with just a .38 and 5 shots. But you were the man that God used. Tell us how you came to carry a .38 with you to church.
David, a long time before that, I was traveling with a friend near a little town called Wellington outside of Cape Town. We were going through to his parents' farm, and I was driving a small little pickup, very small little vehicle. And all of a sudden there were tires burning in the streets of the car, and that was the African National Congress, which was Nelson Mandela's political party. They were burning tires in the road, and as my car came to a standstill, they started throwing rocks and bricks at our vehicle and rocking the vehicle with these bricks that were smashing the windows and denting the vehicle. So that was what happened then, and after that I made the decision to purchase a firearm, and the next time my life was threatened, to use it to protect myself and my family. But it was a long walk for me. I'm telling a quick story in a few minutes, but it was a long theological issue for me as a Christian, whether I could carry a firearm in civilian life and then use it to defend myself. I didn't.
Well, certainly looking back at this, I mean, in hindsight, we can see that you saved a lot of lives. I mean, with 58 people that were wounded and another 11 that were killed. And these guys said after they caught them that they'd been given instructions to throw petrol bombs, Molotov cocktails into the church. It would have been massive carnage if you hadn't fired back at them and they fled.
Many people said they were expecting them to actually walk up and down the aisles and just mow people down.
Yes.
And after the attack, I reached out to them with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And one of the unit commanders said to me, I knew all about the attack before it took place, and our greatest desire was that there wouldn't be a living soul afterwards.
Wow. Wow. And you stopped that by having a gun. As I said, we can see in retrospect, but talk to people who are pacifists, people who are Christian pacifists. Tell them about this journey that you took and how important it is, because we're looking at this right now. We're thinking about the political aspect of it. Every time we have a shooting in America, we have the president and those who want to take away our firearms. They will use this as an opportunity to try to do that. But I want you to talk to the people out there, maybe who are sitting on the sidelines, who are naively thinking that the government is going to protect them. Because how long did this whole thing take? It didn't take that long, did it?
No.